True respect is born from the wellsprings of understanding and compassion, not from fear or the mere appearance of virtue. The Buddha spoke of respect in front of his disciples with a clarity that cut through the air like the ring of a temple bell. It is easy to offer gestures of respect to those in high positions, but as seekers of truth, you must look deeper. He continued, respect must be reserved for actions and qualities that are in harmony with Dharma, the intrinsic nature of righteousness and truth. It is not the title that one carries, but the integrity of their character, the purity of their intentions, and the kindness in their actions that truly deserve your reverence. The Buddha's gaze met each of his disciples as he concluded, therefore, do not give your respect to behaviors that go against the path of enlightenment. Dishonesty, cruelty, greed, intolerance, deceit, arrogance, and ignorance. These are the 7 blights upon the human heart that lead one astray from the path of awakening. Recognize them and do not be swayed by those who embody these traits, for to respect such behaviors is to stray from the path yourself. The disciples sat in contemplative silence, understanding that respect was not a currency to be traded lightly, but a sacred offering to be given only where true virtue resided. The Buddha, having laid the foundation of respect based on virtue rather than status, began to elucidate the 7 behaviors that corrode the fabric of one's character. He first spoke of dishonesty. A dishonest tongue, he said, is the architect of illusion, creating walls that separate us from the truth. It leads us into darkness, away from the light of clarity and trust. Then he addressed cruelty. Acts of cruelty, he warned, are the seeds of suffering, sown in the soil of indifference. They sprout into violence and pain and bear the bitter fruit of karmic retribution. Greed was next. A mind shackled by greed is a prisoner of desire, forever chasing the fleeting shadows of material gain, blind to the wealth of contentment that comes from simplicity and generosity. The 4th behavior, intolerance, was laid bare. Intolerance, he explained, is the blade that divides, cutting us from each other and from the compassion that unites all living beings. It breeds conflict and disharmony, obscuring the interconnectedness of all. Deceit followed. A deceitful nature, he declared, is a maze of confusion. It ensnares not just the deceived, but the deceiver, trapping them in a web from which it is difficult to emerge unscathed. Arrogance was discussed as well. Arrogance, the Buddha stated, is the false elevation of oneself, a delusion of superiority that distances us from the humbly ground of being where we stand equal in our humanity. Lastly, he turned to ignorance. And ignorance, he intoned, is the deepest darkness, the unknowing of one's true natura and the laws of the cosmos. It is the root of all destructive behaviors that keep one from the light of awareness. The Buddha then fell silent, allowing the gravity of his words to imprint upon the hearts of his disciples. These 7 behaviors, he taught, not only caused harm to others, but also to the self, binding the soul to the wheel of samsara, the endless cycle of birth and rebirth. Reflect upon these 7 destructive paths, he urged. See them in the world around you, identify them within yourself, and strive to walk the noble path that leads away from them towards the liberation of nirvana. Beneath the shade of the Bodhi tree, the Buddha began to weave a story for his disciples, a tale that would illustrate the corrosive nature of the 7 destructive behaviors. In a time long past, he began, there was a king who ruled with power and might. His word was law, and his command brought both creation and destruction. Yet, despite his vast dominion, the king was troubled, for his heart was clouded and his mind conflicted. To seek guidance, he ventured forth from his palace, disguised as a commoner, to find a sage, rumored to possess profound wisdom. The king's journey led him to a village where he met the first of 7 individuals, each embodying one of the destructive behaviors. The first was a merchant known for his dishonesty. His scales were rigged, and his words were as false as the counterfeit coins he hoarded. From him, the king saw how dishonesty breeds distrust and chaos, and how it erodes the very foundation of society. Next, he encountered a man feared for his cruelty. The man ruled his household with an iron fist, and his heart seemed devoid of the milk of human kindness. The king felt the pain and fear that such cruelty inflicted, and understood how it could turn hearts to stone. In the marketplace, he met a woman consumed by greed. Her eyes were hollow, her laughter joyless. She grasped at all she could, yet remained deeply unfulfilled. The king saw the futility of greed, how it promised contentment but delivered only endless hunger. As the day wore on, the king came upon a group that scorned a family of foreigners, their intolerance evident in their sneers and harsh words. The king felt the sharp sting of such exclusion and saw the ignorance that fueled it. The 5th person the king met was a local official, a man of deceit who twisted words and facts to suit his own ends. The king observed the confusion and injustice that sprang from such deceit and the way it undermined the trust upon which communities are built. Near the edge of the village, the king encountered a scholar, arrogant in his knowledge. He dismissed the thoughts and contributions of others, isolating himself in a tower of ego. The king saw how arrogance could blind one to the value of others and the lessons they offer. Lastly, as night fell, the king spoke with an old man who confessed his regret at a life lived in ignorance. He had shunned learning and reflection, and his years had slipped by unexamined. The king, moved by the old man's lament, recognized the tragedy of a life cut off from the growth that comes with seeking wisdom. The Buddha paused, allowing his disciples to absorb the journey of the king. Each of these encounters, he continued, taught the king about the suffering that these behaviors cause, both to the individuals who display them and to those around them. He returned to his palace, a changed man, vowing to rule with a heart free from these destructive traits, and to lead his people toward the path of compassion and enlightenment. The disciples listened intently, the parable's message clear. The journey to inner peace and social harmony must navigate past the obstacles of destructive behaviors. The Buddha, having told the tale of the king's encounters, began to impart the moral lessons of the story to his disciples. From the merchant, the king learned the value of honesty. He saw that truth is the currency of trust in any realm, and without it, the very fabric of society begins to unravel. To be honest is to lay a stone upon the path of integrity, the Buddha explained. From the cruel man, the king understood the importance of kindness. Cruelty, like a weed, can choke the garden of the community, leaving only suffering in its wake. Kindness, however, is like rain that nourishes the hearts of all it touches, he continued. Greed, as demonstrated by the woman in the marketplace, is a fire that consumes but is never satiated. The king saw the beauty in generosity, how it cools the flames of want and fosters a sense of abundance and community. The Buddha's words were like seeds, each one planted in the fertile minds of his disciples. Intolerance, he went on, divides us, but the king saw in the foreigner's eyes a shared humanity. He realized that tolerance weaves the diverse threads of people into a tapestry stronger and more beautiful than any single thread could be alone. Deceit creates a labyrinth of lies from which it is hard to escape, the Buddha said, addressing the actions of the deceitful official. The king learned that sincerity clears away the fog of deceit, allowing for the light of clarity and progress. The scholar's arrogance was a mirror for the king, reflecting back at him his own past failings. He learned that humility is the mark of true wisdom, opening one's mind to the endless horizon of learning and the perspectives of others. And from the old man, the king learned the tragic cost of ignorance. He dedicated himself to fostering a kingdom where wisdom was the foundation upon which all else was built, knowing that an enlightened people are the true wealth of any nation. The Buddha concluded, these lessons the king took to heart, transforming not just his rule, but himself. As you walk through life, remember the tale of the king and the 7 destructive behaviors. Embrace their opposites, and you will walk a path that leads to respect, peace, and enlightenment. The Buddha, having shared the moral lessons through the king's journey, now returned to the core of his own teachings to reinforce the message. In the Dhammapada, it is said, hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal rule. This principle applies to all 7 of the destructive behaviors. They are, in essence, forms of hatred against others, against oneself, against the truth. The Buddha spoke with gentle authority. He continued, dishonesty is a hatred of the truth, cruelty, a hatred of compassion, greed, a hatred of contentment, intolerance, a hatred of understanding, deceit, a hatred of sincerity, arrogance, a hatred of equality, and ignorance, a hatred of wisdom. The disciples listened, rapt in attention, as the Buddha taught them how each behavior contradicted the path to enlightenment. The Noble Eightfold Path teaches us right speech, right action, and right livelihood. To follow this path is to reject these 7 destructive behaviors inherently, he said. Right speech is absent in dishonesty and deceit. Right action is violated by cruelty and greed. Right livelihood is undermined by arrogance and ignorance. And above all, intolerance has no place in the heart of one who seeks enlightenment, for it is the antithesis of right understanding and right intention. The Buddha's eyes swept across his assembly of disciples, his gaze imbued with the depth of his wisdom. These teachings are not merely to be studied, but to be lived. As you walk the path, let the knowledge of Dhamma guide you away from these behaviors, for in doing so, you not only purify your own heart, but also help to alleviate the suffering of the world. With these words, the Buddha linked the king's transformative journey with the larger fabric of Buddhist teachings, showing his disciples the universal application of these truths. Consider this, he said. How have these 7 behaviors touched your life? Have you witnessed them in others? Have they found a home within your own actions or thoughts? Reflect deeply on these questions, for it is only through awareness that change begins. He encouraged the disciples to take this reflection and transform it into action. Let your insights inspire you. Cultivate the opposite of these behaviors in your own life. Where there is dishonesty, practice truth. Where you find cruelty, offer kindness. Replace greed with generosity, intolerance with acceptance, deceit with honesty, arrogance with humility, and ignorance with wisdom. The Buddha's voice was both soft and compelling, urging his disciples to apply these lessons beyond their own personal growth. Share this understanding with others. Encourage them to join you on this path of transformation. Together, the collective force of your actions can reshape the world. As the gathering drew to a close, the Buddha looked upon his disciples with compassion and hope. The journey does not end here. Each step you take on the path of virtue sows seeds of peace. Share your experiences with each other, support one another, and continue to seek out the Dharma in all aspects of life. He concluded with a gentle but powerful call. If these teachings have found a place in your heart, let them not stay silent within you. Share them, discuss them in the comments below, and join this growing community by subscribing. Together, let us journey towards a future of understanding and enlightenment. With that, the disciples knew they were not just students of a philosophy, but active participants in a living tradition, one that had the power to transform the tumult of the world into a symphony of peace.